Hi, this is the third and final part of the Q&A with Jess Barlow. We're up to question 8 now, and question 8 is asking what I make of online networking tools such as MySpace and Twitter in reference to their role in news production alongside recognised news websites. What do I make of them? Well, MySpace is really fallen by the wayside in terms of most news production. I think MySpace has really become more of a music-based social networking site than anything else, or a youth-based one. But Twitter, obviously, I've already mentioned, has a number of uses news-wise. I've written widely on this, so I'm not going to repeat too much of it, but I'll just repeat the main points. One is that it's very good for news gathering in terms of introducing an element of serendipity, I think, to what you encounter as a journalist. So just being part of that kind of constant flow of conversation and ideas and news is very important, and that's what Twitter's very good for. It's good for kind of shouting out for ideas or input onto story ideas and information, and it's obviously a very good publishing tool in terms of publishing to mobile and publishing news alerts. But as I said, I mean, I've done quite a long article for journalism.co.uk on how you can use Twitter for journalism, and I've written God knows how many posts about Twitter, so just do a search for Twitter on my blog. Facebook is hugely useful, again on a number of levels. The Washington Post have created a couple of widgets that users can embed on Facebook that do various things around political news, and I think that's really interesting. I think the main thing with online networking tools is their potential for distribution, and I think that's the main implication in terms of how news gets passed around. In terms of news gathering, it's really a networking tool. It's a way of quickly finding either individual experts, for example LinkedIn, it's very useful for that, or for finding groups, special interest groups. There's a blog called Slewfoot Snoop, all one word, which has actually they've written a post about basically they put Facebook and LinkedIn head to head in terms of news gathering, and that was really interesting. I'll try and include a link on my blog where I post this video. Next question. Question 9 is asking what are my thoughts on the latest on Twitter. Well, again, I've written widely about this. Yes, I do use Twitter. I have been since January or February 2007, although I didn't really use it properly until around September when I was at a conference and I had something to Twitter about, and since then I've kind of used it increasingly, and particularly in the last couple of months as I think there's been a shift in terms of the numbers of people that I know that are on Twitter, and because those people are on Twitter, I'm using it a lot more in terms of conversation and kind of social networking. Before then it was very much a kind of a publishing tool from live events. There it's very much more of a social tool, and I Twitter far more often. And it's also more of a news gathering tool. Why do I feel the need to Twitter? Because I have less time to blog, and because what I used to blog about kind of look at this or look at that, and I don't really do that anymore on my blog. Well, I haven't done for a year or so, but Twitter's enabled me to start doing that again and say, read this article, or here's a really good site, or try this tool out. So if I can sum it up in 140 words, characters rather than I do. And related to that, I would mention Seismic, which is kind of is useful for those things that I need to say more about than I would on Twitter, but things that I wouldn't necessarily write a blog post on. So it's useful for social networking, it's useful for distribution, it's useful for just being part of a conversation and finding out what's happening. That's how I found out about the Chinese earthquake. First thing I did was log on to my Twitter account, and that happened to be being talked about by Robert Scoble. Final question, more about Twitter. What are my thoughts on its ability as a tool for breaking news? I think I've really covered that. The main thing about Twitter for me is its integration with mobile. If you're on the spot and something's happening, then you don't even need to boot up your laptop. You can just text message to your Twitter account and it's live. And that's happened on a number of occasions. One of the famous examples is the Egyptian student who was arrested, and as he was arrested, twittered the fact on his mobile phone, which immediately was spread around, and the wheels were set in motion before he even reached the police station effectively. So that's a great example. The Chinese earthquake again, Robert Scoble was twittering about it 3 minutes before the US Geological Society had it. We should bear in mind that in terms of, that's a very Western perspective. In China, news had spread very quickly through things like QQ, which is a kind of an instant messaging tool in China. So it's a way of getting news out there very quickly. It goes to people's mobiles, so I think it's a really strong tool. I've also talked about this in my news diamond model, so again, I'm not going to repeat that. And that's the end of the questions. Thank you, Jess.